Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking on, well, a challenge that's pretty unique, even for us. You've handed us source material that is, and I mean this genuinely, microscopic.
Tiny.
It's a short transcript excerpt, just a few lines from a single teaser trailer uploaded by the Universal Pictures official channel, the one for Taiwan. And it outlines an upcoming Michael Jackson project.
It really is the definition of trying to get massive insight from, well, minimal data. We're looking at, fewer than 50 words of actual quoted dialogue,
Right.
plus a very specific release date and that localized distribution note. But, and this is the key thing, because this information is official, straight from a major studio, every single one of those syllables, every word, it's like a breadcrumb. It leads towards the project's, its central narrative and its business strategy.
Exactly. So our mission today, our deep dive, is to take this snippet, this single really potent DNA sample of what looks like a huge cinematic event, and just extract every possible meaning, every implication we can find.
Yeah, we want to decode the studio's confidence level, the foundational narrative intent, what it tells us about the overall scope, the tone, everything.
And the anchor for this whole thing, the single most concrete fact we have, the thing that lets us build the rest of the analysis, is that specific theatrical release date. It's cited right there in the teaser, April 24, 2026.
Right, that fixed date. That plus those, 7 highly loaded lines of dialogue that follow. That's basically the universe we're exploring today.
Okay, let's unpack this then. And we're going straight into the world of Hollywood scheduling, the business logistics.
Yeah.
Even before we really touch the artistic side of things.
Yeah.
So let's start with that crucial marker, that very specific date, April 24, 2026. This isn't just some vague, sometime in 2026 or even just a season.
No, it's precise.
It's a precise date, locked down nearly, a year and a half before the film is actually set to hit theaters.
Yeah.
What does announcing something that firm so far in advance, what does that tell you about the confidence level, especially for, a project of this scale, the complexity of a Michael Jackson biopic?
It suggests, overwhelming confidence, almost total certainty, and probably an enormous already pre-committed budget. In the current media environment, things are so volatile, dates shift constantly, even for much smaller projects.
All the time.
So for a studio like Universal, even through its regional channels, to lock down an exact Friday slot 18 months out for a film of this magnitude, it means several huge internal milestones must already be secured, nailed down.
Okay, what specifically? What kind of milestones are we talking about? Is it just like the script's done and they're happy with it, or is it bigger?
Oh, it's significantly bigger than just the script. It almost certainly means they have the lead actor, which is the absolute linchpin of this whole thing, contractually secured for that production time frame.
Crucial.
It means the director is locked in. The main filming locations, the sound stages they'll need, the post-production facilities, all the stuff you need for a global tentpole release, that's likely reserved. And maybe even more importantly, it probably means they've globally synchronized their marketing and distribution teams already.
Wow, that far out.
Yeah. A fixed date like this lets them start locking in massive international logistical arrangements. Things like securing premium screen slots, IMAX, Dolby Cinema globally. Those get booked years in advance for major releases.
So this isn't just a placeholder date they might shuffle later.
Absolutely not. It's a non-negotiable stake in the ground. It's for global release coordination. Think of it like planting a flag.
Okay, so this advanced scheduling, it signals the financial investment is just astronomical. Big enough to justify reserving that prime calendar slot way ahead of time, basically minimizing the risk that comes with maybe a floating date that could get bumped by a competitor.
Exactly. They're managing global risk from day one.
Ugh.
And think about the complexities involved here. You've got the Michael Jackson estate, the music rights, which are legendary, the choreography rights, the sheer volume of material they need to clear and produce to be able to confidently say, we're finishing this and it's coming out on this specific date. Well, that demonstrates pretty unparalleled control over those highly sensitive assets.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's zero in on the calendar placement itself now. April 24th, 2026. And when we think of massive biopics or big event films, we usually think peak summer, right? June, July, or maybe the prestige award season, November, December. Why April?
April is it's a highly strategic choice. It's very deliberate. Some people call it the pre-summer power play.
Okay.
By choosing mid-spring, the studio basically avoids the immediate, really congested slugfest of the main summer season, June and July, where you might have 3 or 4 massive franchises all launching practically on top of each other.
Right. Gets crowded.
Instead, they position this film as the major must-see cultural event that kind of launches the global blockbuster season. They get out ahead of the pack.
Huh. That's an interesting move. So you're saying they're intentionally trying not to go head-to-head with, like, the next Marvel movie or Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
And instead, they're claiming the spot as the first global phenomenon of the year.
That's exactly how I read it. It shows real confidence in the project's ability to stand on its own, to draw massive attention, without necessarily needing, say, school holidays or summer vacation crowds to guarantee the big numbers. The film can essentially have a clear run, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, before the true summer onslaught begins, usually around Memorial Day weekend in the U.S.
I definitely hear the confidence argument.
Yeah.
But couldn't April sometimes feel like, well, like a strategic retreat, like maybe avoiding the real heat of June and July, which usually command the absolute highest box office potential?
That's fair. That's a crucial counterpoint.
Is there a scenario where this date suggests maybe the studio is hedging its bets a bit? Recognizing that the film's subject matter, which is obviously complex, might not sustain a traditional, like, 4-quadrant summer blockbuster run?
It's possible to see it that way, yeah. April is certainly, let's say, a safer bet in terms of guaranteeing a certain box office floor. But when you look at the history of prestige blockbusters, films that have both awards ambition and that global scale, that April slot can be incredibly powerful for building momentum.
Okay. Like what?
Well, think about films like Captain America, The Winter Soldier, maybe some of the Fast and Furious movies, or even more specialized, serious biopics that open strong in Q2. They get the whole year to sort of gather steam, build word of mouth.
So it's kind of prioritizing both critical runway and commercial success. An April release gives it time for the film to establish itself, maybe even as an awards contender later in the year.
Precisely. If you release something big in, say, late November or December, you're often right up against the awards deadlines, sometimes too late to really gather critical steam for the major nominations. Opening in April allows a film to get initial praise, stay in the cultural conversation throughout the summer and fall, and then maybe get re-released or heavily promoted again during the actual awards season push later.
Okay.
So this date, April 24th, it really screams, we are aiming for massive box office success and prestige recognition. It feels like very deliberate positioning to balance that commercial viability with potential critical merit. And that balance is essential for a subject as, well, historically weighty and complex as Michael Jackson.
That definitely deepens the strategic implication. Okay, now let's pivot to the second piece of concrete data we have. That's the distribution note itself, especially since it comes from the official Universal Pictures channel, albeit the Taiwan one. And the note reads, A.
Yeah, this specific phrase, "Oh Chayan," it's crucial, because it confirms the intended experience. It translates pretty much literally to see you in theaters across Taiwan. So while the immediate audience for that specific teaser might be regional, the origin, a major studio channel, and the explicit language, well, that tells us everything about the film's intended format.
And the key, really non-negotiable word here is that reference to theatrical release or cinema, the word jug.
Absolutely vital. I mean, especially now in this post-streaming world where so many biopics, even high-budget dramas get routed straight to streaming platforms.
True.
The explicit announced intention for a theatrical run confirms this project is being positioned as an event film, something designed for the big screen experience. It confirms they're banking on spectacle, they're banking on the sound design, and crucially, they're banking on that communal, shared experience you really only get in a cinema.
And for a musical icon like Michael Jackson, that feels paramount, doesn't it? His whole career, his work, it was spectacle, personified.
Exactly.
If they couldn't capture that scale, that sound, for a proper cinema environment, the project would just fundamentally diminish the subject matter, wouldn't it?
Totally. It would feel wrong. So the decision to commit to a major theatrical run, confirmed even in just a regional teaser like this, it signifies extremely high confidence in the film's ability to command a substantial global box office return. They're positioning this as something you must see on the largest screen possible with the best sound system.
Right.
And that level of logistical and financial commitment, it just establishes the massive scope we need to keep in mind as we start analyzing the narrative lines next.
So, okay, we've established the fixed global ambition, the cinema with a capital C format. This definitely isn't some quiet little documentary. This is a massive operation they're mounting.
No question.
Okay, so we've sort of nailed down the logistics, the when and the where of it all. Now we can transition from those concrete facts to the interpretation, looking at the narrative theme, which seems to be embedded right there in the dialogue snippets.
Yeah, this is where we start getting into the film's DNA, you could say. Its promise to the audience. This handful of lines, it's like the foundational contract. It tells us what specific kind of story they intend to tell about a figure whose narrative has been, let's face it, incredibly fragmented and complex, especially over the last few decades.
Okay, let's start with the opening line then. It feels like a direct address. I know you've been waiting a long time for this.
Yeah. That line, right off the bat, it establishes this incredibly empathetic, almost validating relationship with the audience. It's an acknowledgement of decades of speculation, anticipation, and, frankly, all the controversies that have surrounded the very idea of a definitive cinematic biography of Michael Jackson.
It feels like a direct nod to the fans, definitely, but also maybe just the broader global audience who've maintained some kind of emotional investment in him, his music, his story. It's like the film is saying, we get it. We know this is a huge deal, and we respect the high expectations.
And that acknowledgement, that's a critical piece of positioning. By recognizing the anticipation, the project instantly frames itself, not just as another historical account, but as the long-awaited, maybe essential cultural moment. It's setting the emotional stage right away, basically saying, this film is worth the wait, and we, the filmmakers, understand the gravity of the task we've undertaken.
Okay, moving on to lines 2 and 3. They seem to define the scope. Let's take it from the top. This is your story. Let's begin with that phrase, take it from the top. In music, in performance, it means restarting right, getting it right from the beginning. What does that suggest for the structure of this presumably massive narrative?
It explicitly suggests a comprehensive approach, probably a chronological origin story. I mean, for Michael Jackson, you almost have to start at the absolute foundation, don't you?
Yeah, you'd think so.
The Jackson 5, Gary, Indiana, those early triumphs, the eventual split. Taking it from the top promises that full, contextualized journey. They seem to be promising to show the roots before the global spectacle, explaining how the King of Pop was made, not just presenting the fact that he existed.
So they aren't just dropping us straight into like the Thriller era or something. They're planning to guide us meticulously through the entire creation of the legend.
Exactly. It implies a pretty dense narrative, maybe a very long feature film, or perhaps even multiple parts, who knows. But it suggests they won't skip the hard work of building that foundational understanding of the environment, the family, the industry that shaped him.
Now let's address that really crucial word choice in the second part of that line. The part that shifts the ownership of the narrative. This is your story. Why do you think they went with your story, bypassing the more obvious his story, or even my story if it were narrated?
Your story. That is, I think, an incredibly sophisticated piece of narrative positioning, especially when you're trying to manage a legacy as complex and debated as his. By framing it as your story, the project positions the audience as, well, integral, almost like co-authors of the legacy itself.
How so?
Well, Michael Jackson's career wasn't just a solitary event happening over there, right? It was a defining global cultural force. It's inextricably linked to the personal histories of billions of people who grew up with his music, who imitated his style, who just witnessed the cultural shockwaves he created.
Okay, so it's not just going to be a recounting of historical facts. It's framed as an invitation for the audience to see their own cultural history, their own youth maybe, reflected in his trajectory. It emphasizes that connection, maybe a sense of shared ownership. It suggests the project intends to validate the collective memory around him.
Yes, exactly. It creates an immediate emotional contract. The film isn't just reporting history from a distance. It seems to want to engage in a dialogue with you, the viewer, about your own memories and how you consumed and maybe internalized his genius, his performances, his whole persona.
Mm-hmm.
And for younger viewers, maybe it serves to contextualize a figure they might only know through, I don't know, fragmented YouTube clips or controversy headlines. It could connect them to the more visceral, shared experience of his global peak.
Okay, I see the appeal. But couldn't that phrase, "this is your story," also be read a bit cynically? Is it potentially manipulative language, like designed to make the audience feel a sense of responsibility for the narrative the film chooses to tell? Could it effectively shield the filmmakers from criticism if they decide to emphasize certain aspects over others?
That is absolutely the necessary critical lens we have to apply here. Yes, the language is highly persuasive, no doubt about it. If the audience accepts that sense of ownership of the story, they might become more invested in defending it, or at least absorbing its intended perspective more readily. However, even if you view it as strategically manipulative, it still reveals a core intention. The creators understand they must deliver a highly personalized, culturally relevant account. They know they can't just present a dry historical document. They have to deliver a story that feels vital and shared. So ultimately, they're promising an account that aims to transcend the individual and speak to that broader cultural impact.
That makes the narrative mission pretty clear. And it brings us nicely to what feels like the core thematic statement of the whole teaser, captured in line 4. Honor your past and embrace the future.
Yeah, this line feels absolutely central. It establishes the core thematic tension, the balancing act of the entire project. The honor your past part seems pretty straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm.
It covers the musical genius, the innovation, maybe the humanitarian efforts, the iconic videos, the global adoration. It's the required reverence for the undisputed achievements, the things everyone agrees on.
But the second part, the embrace the future aspect, that's critical, isn't it? Especially for a story about someone whose career, whose life has technically concluded. What's the cinematic implication of embracing the future in the context of a biopic being released in, 2026?
It implies, I think, that the film will actively seek to reframe, maybe recontextualize, and definitely demonstrate the enduring relevance of Jackson's work and legacy. Embracing the future means trying to secure that legacy for the next 50 years, not just cataloging the last 50. This seems essential for a contemporary audience who, as we said, might primarily know him through controversy or just those fragmented media clips. They need to understand why he still matters.
Yeah, so how might a film actually achieve that future embrace?
Well, it probably has to show the thread of influence.
Yeah.
It likely means highlighting how Michael Jackson's innovations, his artistry, continue to shape contemporary art, music production, dance, performance, fashion.
Yeah.
Everything. We should probably expect scenes or maybe montages that demonstrate his impact on modern artists, whether it's, the stage presence of performers like Bruno Mars or The Weeknd, or the kind of visual spectacle adopted by modern pop icons. It has to draw that line from him to now. Furthermore, it suggests the film will likely use a modern lens, a 2026 perspective, to address the complexities and the difficulties of his life as well. It's not just about the music's future, it's about understanding the past from the future's viewpoint.
That feels like a really crucial strategy. Because by tying the narrative to the present day, to the future, the film can justify addressing the difficult or controversial elements of the past, not just ignoring them or treating them as isolated incidents, but maybe placing them in a broader, more modern context. Perhaps arguing you need that context to fully appreciate the totality of his artistic output.
Yes, it's potentially a way to find that tricky balance between, say, pure hagiography, just celebrating him, and providing the necessary critical context that a modern audience expects.
It helps ensure the film feels transformative, not just archival. Like you said, a film that just retreads history might only appeal to existing nostalgia.
Right, but a film that successfully argues for continued influence and relevance, a film that truly embraces the future, that justifies the massive theatrical budget and maybe secures its position as a cultural necessity in 2026, not just a historical artifact.
Which perfectly sets up the next line, line 5, which feels like a profound piece of creative justification. That's what people want.
Yeah, this is the creative team, or the voice in the teaser, essentially placing their decisions directly under the banner of audience demand. It's a statement that justifies that chosen narrative balance we were just talking about, the commitment to both honoring the past and addressing the future's perspective. They're basically saying, look, we are not making this film just for ourselves or for critics. We are making the definitive story that the public has been demanding.
But again, if we challenge that phrase, what do people want? Is it clear? Do they want a comfortable, purely nostalgic journey? Just the hits? Or do they actually want the comprehensive, maybe more challenging account that addresses the full, complicated scope of his life?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But given the density of the lines that came before it, that promise to take it from the top, the commitment to the future, it seems the filmmakers are suggesting that what people truly want is the holistic view.
Okay.
They want the respect shown to the iconic moments, yes, but maybe coupled with a forward-looking perspective on why his art still matters today, even amidst all the complexity. This phrase, "that's what people want," it attempts to unify the audience behind the film's specific thematic approach. It justifies the inevitable creative risks they must be taking with a story like this.
Wow. Okay, so in just those 5 short lines, we've moved from acknowledging the patience of the fans to promising a definitive origin story, validating the audience's role in the legacy, establishing that core theme of balancing history and future relevance, and then justifying the whole creative endeavor as meeting overwhelming public demand.
It's an incredibly tight, very strategic narrative mission statement packed into just a few seconds of audio.
Yeah.
It really is a testament to the marketing team's understanding of the global conversation surrounding Michael Jackson. They know exactly which emotional buttons to push and which narrative promises absolutely must be delivered, or at least hinted at right from the start.
Okay, so we spent a good chunk of time there on the large-scale stuff, the logistics, the release date, the grand narrative themes. Now, the final 3 lines of this teaser transcript, they pull us right into the immediate, almost intimate setting of the production itself. It feels like a really dizzying shift.
It really does, from, Wall Street level budgeting and worldwide release coordination down to the whisper of a recording studio or a rehearsal space.
Yeah.
These last few phrases, they offer a literal glimpse behind the curtain. They suggest we might be hearing audio from either a rehearsal, maybe a critical recording session, or perhaps even a highly focused, dramatic scene within the film itself, a scene that isolates the creative process.
Let's focus first on that statement of readiness, a sentence that, as you hinted before, holds massive business and legal weight. The tracks are made. The songs are ready.
Yeah, this is an explicit confirmation of, let's say, high preparedness concerning the musical component, which for any Michael Jackson project is arguably the single most complicated and sensitive asset they have to deal with. Saying the tracks are made suggests that this monumental task, securing the rights, arranging the masters, maybe deciding how to integrate the music into the film's structure, is largely complete, or at least very far along.
Let's delve a bit deeper into the business implications there. For a figure like Michael Jackson, whose estate is famously protective, fiercely guards his catalog, what exactly is the scale of the legal and logistical hurdle they're basically confirming they've cleared with that line?
Oh, it's genuinely a Herculean effort. First, just getting clearance for the original master recordings. Those are often prohibitively expensive, and the negotiations can involve multiple layers, the estate, maybe different music labels depending on the era. It's complex.
Right.
Second, if the film is a traditional biopic featuring an actor performing the iconic songs, then they also have to record, master, and probably get approval for those new tracks, those new performances. And the production has to guarantee that the sonic quality meets an impossibly high standard. Jackson standards.
So the implication is, if the film production were still battling to clear just 1 or 2 critical songs, like imagine they couldn't get Thriller or Billie Jean, they could never confidently set that specific April 2026 date we talked about earlier.
Precisely. The readiness of the music is like the baseline guarantee for the whole project schedule. It is the one fixed, arguably unimpeachable element of his legacy. So this short phrase, the tracks are made, the songs are ready, it tells us that the foundation, the auditory experience that is absolutely crucial to drive audiences into the cinema for this particular story is locked down.
Okay.
And that assurance, it removes one of the biggest potential production delays and, frankly, financial liabilities. It signals production efficiency and, again, control over the most sensitive assets of the Jackson legacy.
Okay, that makes sense. Now we move into the actual staging instructions in the transcript, which are intensely atmospheric. We get 2 very specific commands that seem to define the immediate environment. Can you lower the lights for me, please? And then, okay, well, remember in here, keep those feet still, my man.
Yeah, these 2 short phrases, they place us instantly, don't they? Right into a focused, probably intimate, and definitely professional environment. Starting with that first one, Q and the lights. Q suggests a known production name, maybe a nickname, likely a technician, maybe a lighting director, or a stage manager. And the request itself, lower the lights for me, please, it instantly creates intimacy, doesn't it? It dials down the visual noise.
Yeah, it's an instruction that feels designed to remove the visual spectacle, at least for that moment. If you lower the lights, the focus shifts, right? Shifts
Yeah.
entirely to the sound, maybe the voice, perhaps the internal emotional state of the performer. It's setting a very deliberate mood, maybe for a vulnerable, dramatic moment in the film, or perhaps during a sensitive recording take.
And it highlights that contrast we talked about earlier. We went from the blinding spectacle of Universal's global planning and that huge release date down to this quiet, controlled command being given in what sounds like a dimly lit room. It feels like the project is promising to show us those quiet, focused moments of creation, the moments that underpin the massive public performance.
And that contrast seems to culminate in the final line of the transcript. That highly specific and, I think, deeply provocative instruction. Keep those feet still, my man. I mean, it feels like an intentional contradiction, doesn't it? Michael Jackson is, perhaps more than anyone, defined by movement, by feet that famously never stopped. Why the emphasis on stillness?
This is the line, for me, this is the line that really captures the central tension, maybe the artistic ambition of the entire project. The instruction to cease dynamic movement. It implies a moment where the external performance, the thing we all know, must pause so that something more internal or maybe more technically delicate can occur. We probably need to consider both the practical and the symbolic interpretations here.
Okay, let's start with the practicalities, like the hard realities of recording audio.
Okay, practically speaking. If they're recording a vocal track, especially in a high-fidelity studio environment, any extraneous movement, the slightest tap of a heel, a shuffle of a foot on the floor, even breathing too loudly at the wrong microsecond can compromise the take. For a man who was reportedly constantly in motion, physically embodying the music even when just listening, stopping his physical impulses, that energy, would be a direct, practical necessity to ensure audio perfection on a vocal track. So the instruction could simply be focusing attention on the voice, the breath, the internal concentration needed to deliver a flawless vocal performance.
So it could just be a technical note, really, almost disguised as something more profound.
But symbolically,
that keep those feet still, my man, feels far more compelling, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Symbolically, this feels like the project signaling its determination to pause the spectacle, the dancing, the visual performance we expect, and instead examine the core human being behind all those iconic movements. Michael Jackson's incredible dance, it often functioned almost like a mask, didn't it? An external projection of unbelievable control and dynamism. So being told to keep those feet still is like telling him, or perhaps the actor portraying him, to stop the routine, to stop the physical shield for a moment and focus on the stillness, maybe the vulnerability, the voice itself, the reflection required for genuine depth.
That suggests the film is promising to show us the man without the choreography. The moment of maybe profound stillness before or after the explosion of global performance. That's actually a powerful promise, a promise of dramatic intimacy.
It really is. And it also raises another possibility. Maybe the instruction isn't even being given to Michael Jackson himself or a representation of him. Maybe it's being given to the actor portraying Michael Jackson.
Ah, interesting. How so?
Well, think about the immense challenge for that actor. They must spend years practicing the iconic choreography, internalizing it. Maybe during a quiet, dramatic scene, they're struggling to maintain stillness. Maybe their body subconsciously keeps trying to slip into performance mode.
Right, muscle memory.
Exactly. So the instruction becomes a directorial note. Stop mimicking the performance for this beat. Focus on the internal emotional state we need right now. It would highlight the incredible discipline and control required, not just for Jackson, but for the actor trying to embody him at that level of art.
And finally, let's quickly analyze the familiarity that seems embedded in the address. My man. That term suggests a very comfortable, probably intimate, maybe trusted relationship between the speaker and the person being addressed.
Yeah, that's key, I think. It's not a formal directive coming from some distant authority figure. It sounds like a casual, maybe supportive, yet still firm instruction from a peer or a close colleague. Someone like a producer, a choreographer, a vocal coach. Someone who has permission to coach and instruct that directly without risking offense.
Right.
And that small detail, it just reinforces the sense of intimacy already established by the request to lower the lights. It suggests the film isn't just going to show us, public interviews or press conferences. It's aiming to take us into the inner circle, into that trusted professional environment where these raw moments of creation actually occur.
So the combination, the control, lower the lights, the absolute necessity for precision, keep those feet still, and then that warmth or familiarity, my man. It paints a really compelling picture, doesn't it? A picture of a creative environment focused on extracting the highest quality, maybe the most authentic performance possible. And it contrasts so wildly with the global machinery that set that April 2026 date.
It's a fascinating juxtaposition.
Okay, so this is where we try to synthesize everything we've extracted, connect all these kind of disparate elements, the hard logistics, the grand narrative themes, and those really intimate production details into maybe a single cohesive blueprint for what this massive project might be.
Yeah, I think we've definitely established a high-stakes scenario here. We have a film that seems built with absolute global event-level confidence, the universal backing, that locked-in 2026 date. It seems driven by a very specific narrative mission, that honor past, embrace future idea, and it's validated by that explicit statement of musical readiness. Tracks are ready. But I think the ultimate insight, the real takeaway, lies in that contradiction we just discussed. The contradiction between the sheer scale of the operation and the intense focus implied by those final lines.
Let's put those two extremes right next to each other then. On one hand, you have the absolute financial certainty suggested by an April 24, 2026 worldwide theatrical release that's a multi-million, maybe hundreds of millions dollar business decision.
Oh, and huge investment.
And on the other hand, you have that quiet, almost whispered command, keep those feet still, my man, given to, presumably, an individual in a dimly lit, focused space. How does that central tension define the film's potential marketing and maybe its eventual success?
I think that tension is the marketing hook, or at least a major part of it. The studio seems to be promising the audience both the spectacle and the intimacy. They're saying, yes, absolutely, we have the massive budget, we have the global scope, we're going to deliver the moonwalk, the iconic performances, the sound design you expect from a theatrical event.
Right, big stuff.
But crucially, they also seem to be promising, and we will give you something maybe you haven't seen before. The disciplined, perhaps vulnerable human core of the artist, captured in those quiet moments between the spectacle.
So, if the film fails to successfully bridge that gap, like if it ends up being all spectacle and maybe not enough depth or perceived depth, it risks being just another glossy hagiography, maybe.
Exactly.
And that feat still command, it feels like the film's subtle promise to try and avoid that superficiality.
Precisely. It signals seriousness. It signals artistic ambition beyond just replication. And in the context of that theme, honor your past and embrace the future, the stillness almost becomes the prerequisite for genuine depth. To truly honor the past, maybe you have to show the work, the discipline, the internal cost involved, not just the shiny result.
And to embrace the future.
And to embrace the future, you arguably need to present a nuanced human being, warts and all perhaps, not just a digitized idol from the past. The stillness allows for that nuance.
Let's focus again on that narrative strategy of embracing the future, particularly as it relates to the, let's be honest, incredibly complex public narrative surrounding Michael Jackson. For a film aiming for both critical and commercial success in 2026, it basically has to address the entirety of his story, doesn't it? The highs and the lows. How does this very brief teaser suggest the film might handle the more controversial elements?
I think the strategy is embedded in that narrative framing we discussed, particularly by inviting the audience to sort of own the story, this is your story, and by committing to looking forward, embrace the future. That combination, that approach, it potentially allows the filmmakers to present the complexities, the controversies, not as simple accusations that need to be defended or ignored, but maybe as historical facts or allegations that need to be understood or at least viewed through the lens of modern cultural understanding, maybe even psychological awareness.
So it's not about ignoring the complexity, but about attempting to recontextualize it for a new generation or just for our current moment.
That seems to be the implied approach. Yes, that future component gives them the necessary critical distance, potentially. They can show the influence he still has on artists today, highlighting that his work continues to evolve in its impact, thereby maybe arguing for an enduring artistic value that, in their view, might outweigh or at least contextualize the historical controversies. The film will likely have to devote significant time to showing that profound artistic impact, the positive legacy, thereby strengthening the argument for his continuing relevance, which is the future they seem to want us to embrace.
Let's circle back quickly to that audience ownership idea implied by "this is your story." You called it sophisticated before, and it really does feel like a masterstroke in audience engagement, especially for a biopic of someone this globally known.
It really is an instant emotional shortcut, isn't it? The creators are essentially leveraging the collective history, the shared memory of the audience itself, the decades-long relationship that millions, maybe billions of fans have had with his work that becomes part of the narrative engine driving the film.
Right.
And if the audience feels that sense of ownership, however consciously or subconsciously, they are arguably much more likely to show up in massive numbers come April 2026, maybe more likely to defend the film critically, ensure its word-of-mouth success. It attempts to transform passive viewing into a more active participation in the continuation or the cementing of the legacy.
And when that line follows, let's take it from the top, it really underlines that the creators feel they need to meticulously guide the audience through the entire journey. Knowing that journey is so deeply intertwined with the collective memory of the world over the last, 40, 50 years?
Yes.
It's like they're promising the definitive origin story, the one that explains how the world changed alongside him and how he changed the world.
And that implication of definitive is extremely high stakes. If they're willing to plant that flag with an exact date and promise a comprehensive start from the top, they are essentially implicitly taking a stand against maybe all previous narratives, documentaries, unauthorized accounts, fragmented media portrayals. They seem to be claiming to offer the final, complete picture, perhaps the one vetted and approved, certainly for cinematic consumption. And that level of implied promise, that claim to definitiveness, is likely what drives the massive commercial confidence we see reflected in that early April date.
Let's use the specificity of that date again, just to look at the business strategy one last time. That April 24th slot, especially coupled with the confidence of tracks already, suggests the studio probably views this film as having legs, right? Meaning they expect it to perform strongly over many weeks, not just burn out after the opening weekend.
Absolutely. A film like this, positioned the way it seems to be, it needs staying power to leverage that long potential awards runway we talked about. They must be planning significant global press campaigns, maybe aiming for a high volume of quality review coverage to maintain momentum from that April launch right through the competitive summer months and beyond.
Right.
And that statement that the music is ready, it acts like the internal financial and logistical assurance that they won't hit any last-minute, potentially catastrophic delays, like failing to clear a key song that could derail that entire carefully constructed schedule. If the music isn't ready on time, the whole marketing and distribution plan could just fall apart. It becomes worthless.
So this whole deep dive, just looking at, 7 lines of dialogue and a date from a regional teaser, it's actually given us a pretty comprehensive blueprint for what looks like a high-stakes, meticulously planned, and thematically complex cinematic event.
It really has.
It seems built on massive confidence and clearly a deep understanding of the audience's emotional and historical investment in the subject.
It's a phenomenal example, really, of how every single word, every pause, every detail in a major studio marketing launch, especially for a project this sensitive, is likely calibrated. We're seeing them 18 months before release, already establishing the film's intended status, major event cinema, its primary thematic conflict, legacy versus future, its guaranteed core assets, the music, and its desired relationship with the audience, intimacy and shared ownership. They seem to have minimized ambiguity everywhere, except, perhaps, in that intentional, provocative contradiction of the still feet.
And that intentional ambiguity, the still feet, that feels like the project's artistic invitation, doesn't it? It's like it's telling the world, you know the spectacle, you know the moves, now come see the soul.
And that ultimately might be the difference between a truly successful, memorable biopic and one that's merely adequate or respectful. The success probably hinges entirely on whether they can convincingly reveal the internal life of a figure whose external life was, maybe more than anyone else's, the very definition of global spectacle. #outro.
Well, this deep dive has been pretty remarkable, I have to say. Really demonstrating the vast amount of context and potential insight that you can actually draw from even the most microscopic pieces of official information if you analyze them thoroughly and critically.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to synthesize what this dive seems to have revealed, we're looking at a globally ambitious project, confirmed by a major distributor with a fixed, highly strategic 2026 release date. The narrative seems defined by this mission to honor your past and embrace the future, aiming to recontextualize this massive legacy for a modern audience. And critically, we got that intimate peek into a production environment that seems focused on intense control, precision, maybe vulnerability, captured in that command for stillness, which contrasts so sharply with the film's massive scale.
And the project promises to be comprehensive, right? Starting from the top, acknowledging the audience's long wait, and justifying its own existence by claiming to deliver the nuanced story that, quote, people want. Logistically, it signals readiness. The tracks are made, the songs are ready, the date is firmly set.
But what stands out most compellingly for me, I think, is still that central unifying contradiction we kept coming back to. The source material tells the global audience, essentially, that they are ready for auditory and visual spectacle, the music's ready. Yet in the same breath, it has this voice instructing an intimate colleague, keep those feet still, my man. That juxtaposition feels like the core of the project's potential identity.
Which leaves us and you with a final provocative thought to maybe explore over the coming months as we wait for more information. If Michael Jackson's dance, his movement, was the primary language he used to communicate with the world, what profound truth, or maybe what necessary vulnerability, is only revealed when that specific communication stops?
What does the quiet, controlled core of this story actually look like when the motion, which could be seen as the distraction or the shield, is completely paused?
You have plenty of time to explore that idea before April 24th, 2026.
Indeed. And until the next deep dive, always question the intent behind the announcement. Look at the detail.
And keep those feet moving, unless, of course, someone shouts, "Cue," and asks you to lower the lights. We'll see you next time.